Well, let's get talking now. There has been considerable discussions about Nigeria's ailing economy, staggering inflation, the budget, inflation, all theft, all revenue and foreign exchange issues, amongst other contemporary issues, of course, bedeviling the nation. With an ever-increasing spate of cross-border transactions, activities and interests of investors, lenders, and companies become increasingly global. And there is need to cut through the chase and understand this complex trade, investments, and economic issues with a view to gaining insights on well-reasoned, defensible valuations and professional advice. Today, joining us live in the studio to look at all of these burning issues is Mr. Eben Joels. He is a lead partner and head of technology and regulatory services, Stransact-RSM International. Thank you so much. It's good to have you, and it's your first time on the show. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, let's start with the big one, and that's everywhere now. That's talking about your thoughts on the planned redesign of 200 naira, 500 naira, 1,000 naira. While the CBN maintains that that is the way to go, some are saying this is a misplaced priority.
Well, I think my issue is with the window allowed for the event.
It's too short?
It's too short. I think 6 weeks is going to put pressure on banks, pressure on the available resources the banks have going to put pressure on everyone, to return their money to the banks within the 6 weeks window. As you and I know, the smaller denominations, 100 naira, 50 naira, can barely buy anything now. So the naira that most people are holding is the ones that are, going to be affected by this redesign. So if everybody needs to get their naira into the bank within a 6 weeks window, or lose its value altogether, then there's going to be increased pressure on every participant in the market, everybody.
And what are the ripple effects of that, if that happens?
Well, it's good that we know we're going to need to manage the risk associated with that. And for me, the biggest risk is during this period of heightened insecurity in the country. When we think of Nigeria, a lot of people limit Nigeria to Lagos, Abuja, but we have a significant number of Nigerians living in the villages that are actually at the mercy of most of the insecurity going on in Nigeria. And most of those places don't have banks. Banks are not within, in those places, they still account for the bulk of the cash transactions going on now. In urban areas, electronic transactions, paying is fairly advanced and constitute a significant amount of transactions going on in urban areas. But in the non-urban areas where there are no banks, that is where most of the cash transactions go on. That is where the bulk of insecurity is in this country. And that is where you want them to carry this cash physically and go to the bank. We just need everyone to be prepared to manage the risk associated with it within the 6 weeks window.
Well, sincerely, this is an interesting angle to it, talking about. But let's look at the CBN's drive now. Of course, e-Naira adoption, that's our own digital currency when crypto and all of that came into town. But I want to ask you how you see this translating to helping to, of course, revamp the alien economy. Can that do, and also improve financial inclusion?
Sometimes we Nigerians don't give too much credit to some of the things we do in Nigeria. For example, our electronic payment system is way advanced compared to that of many other developed countries. When we started having our Nuban, having, integrating payment across platforms, instant payments to any bank happens, live all the time here. It is not like that in most in most countries, even advanced countries. So I think in our haste to be, again, be at the forefront of the first central bank issued digital currency, the whole world is actually interested in seeing how our e-Naira project fails or how it fares, whether it fails or whether it succeeds, because they want to learn the lessons from that. Some of the price you pay for being a pioneer, in that kind of environment. But having said that, I think the central bank issued out wrong vibes, because most of the people who deal with digital currency or who are interested in cryptocurrency initially got the vibe that these things were banned by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And these are the most people who do straightforward old Naira transactions do not want to open digital wallets. They don't even know what that is, So if the same people who are used to, you've already scared them from that whole thing by saying that digital currency is banned, then you release your own.
So it's not difficult to convince people to take advantage of your own e-naira.
Exactly. So those people are, it's like your market. You turned them, you made them skeptics.
So you would have done better than this if you look at the figures the CBN has been reeling out. It's 1 year and they're talking about the transactions. I think about 8 billion naira transaction has been conducted through that e-naira wallet.
Yes, but the level of penetration
remains low, right?
Remains very low, and I think, like I said, most of the people who operate in that space were scared of that whole e-naira thing because of the initial vibes coming from the central bank that digital currency was banned in Nigeria, all cryptos, So the way we manage that into transition to the e-naira, and then there are other things. The central bank issued digital currency will do that cryptocurrencies will do that a central bank digital currency will not do. So let's put it on. Let's keep watching, and the whole world is interested.
We have a lot to talk about, so let's move very, very, very quickly as fast as we can. Let's look at the budget. I know I've done a lot around the budget, sectorial breakdown and all of that, but how realizable would you say are the revenue expectations in this budget? Some say it looks like a very tall order, considering what we face, crude oil theft and all of that.
I think the budget is fairly reasonable because the revenue projections, it has a very big budget deficit that is supposed to be funded by borrowings, and a deficit budget allows room for growth, if you like, So, I mean, if they wanted to be overtly optimistic, they could have said, oh, we're going to make XYZ revenue next year, and they don't make it. But they were reasonable by not being overtly overly optimistic, So, but the bigger issue is implementation of budgets in Nigeria. So there are policy statements that you would expect, to accompany such budget estimates or budget pronouncements that should have an effect on especially our small and medium business owners. I give you an example. For example, the United States government is one of the biggest contractors in the world, and by law they set aside a reasonable percentage between 10 to 20%, I think, to small businesses. So every contract the U.S. government signs out, by law, the contractor must employ small businesses to execute a minimum of 20 to 25% of that. So that has a ripple effect on the economy, because the small businesses are always the biggest employers, the biggest players in any economy. So our budget doesn't seem to talk to these people, and I think that for me is the bigger issue than the revenue projections.
I want to also, are you thinking that there might be a supplementary budget?
There is always going to be a supplementary
We had
budget.
one the last time. We had one for COVID. We had...
Yeah, but in 2023, with the prospect of a new government, I mean, it is to be expected that as soon as the new government comes in, they have their own priorities. They will have their own... promises that have been made to the electorate. They want to hit the ground running. There is typically going to be supplementary budgets as soon as you have a new government in May.
Let's talk about trading now, intra-African trading. I was opportune to attend the intra-African trade fair in Durban, South Africa, last November, and a lot of talks around African countries coming together. I think about 1.2 billion people now, 1.3 billion people across the continent, across African continent. And I also believe that if we do business or do things together, we can get better, strengthen our currencies and all of that. But I want to ask, do you think Nigeria is taking advantage. Now in focus, the AFCFTA. Are we ready to tap into this?
Yeah, so we are not. And we're not ready, not because there's anything wrong with the free trade treaty or anything like that. But because we have a tendency to take textbook prescriptions in Africa without looking at our cultural perspective. Now, one of the things free trade agreements of that nature do is free movement of people. Free movement of people to go to another country within Africa, set up. It's free movement of goods and people. It's not just goods. It's not just, it's free movement of people and goods. Now, if we have countries where you don't like other people that are not even from your country, other fellow Africans, dark-skinned Africans going to South Africa, could be mugged and murdered in the name of xenophobia. We all watched Nigerians being, being chased out of Ghana some time ago. Businesses were being closed. So if you don't sensitize your, you don't sensitize the populace, then there's no free movement of people within Africa. African businessmen cannot freely come live here for 3 months to set up a business, and we just want to borrow what, say, the North American free trade, or the Asian free trade is doing, or the European free trade is doing. We don't just borrow a hook, line, and sinker. We need to prepare our people culturally to understand the benefits of free movement and of goods and people within the African continent. And I agree with you that the African continent is actually positioned to take, we have the youngest population in the world. In the next 50 years, we're going to have the youngest population, more people in the world, and the action should actually be focused on Africa. But we still have a long way to go in Africa in terms of getting our people prepared.
Long way to go. I'm always scared when I hear that. Long way. How long is that way? But before you tell me how long that is, talk to me. Tie that to inflation, which we've seen spiraling all the while. And there is that projection that it will continue to look that way. Though the CBN governor has said, we'll also continue to increase rates if the interest rates continue to be, we'll also increase interest rates if inflation continues to increase on the other side, which to me, I don't think is raining on inflation. What do you think? Do you think people really understand what inflation standing at above 20%, what it means? Can we simplify it and explain it to Nigerians to understand? And even our international viewers.
Yeah, for most people my age in Nigeria, they will remember the 50 kobo note.
I still saw that.
And and for me, relatively not so long ago, for example, when the 1 naira note was turned to 1 naira coin, that was around 1991. It wasn't so long. A lot of us were in secondary school. And some of us nicknamed that fat coin Babangida button. Those buttons or those coins are no longer used in Nigeria. They've disappeared because they can't buy anything. And so inflation in a layman's terms is simple. When the money you have can no longer buy what it used to buy, you find out that sachet water, which we all buy, maybe, you can, with 50 naira, you can barely buy anything these days, So you see more naira, your purchasing power continues to come under very strong attack because of rising prices. And your earnings will not be able to increase commensurately with the rising prices. It is what a lot of us are going through. And unfortunately in this country, I think in the last 40 years, we've only managed to bring inflation under single digits for just short periods, not for a long time, not like for a 10-year period we had. No, inflation has always been double digits for a long time.
And the impact cannot be overemphasized.
Oh no, the quality of life that we live, gets eroded, as our earning powers get eroded. we hope we don't get into hyperinflationary situations where the rate of inflation is so high, much higher than 20%, that you decide that you cannot even do a proper accounting of your profits based on normal rules because of hyperinflation. You have that situation in places like Zimbabwe, you know. So we are hoping that as the global situation, maybe including the war between Russia and Ukraine, as all this cools and we get our political environment to cool down towards maybe inflation should start coming down naturally, and then as the price of one of the biggest drivers of inflation in Nigeria is the price of crude, because we are importing all the we are importing so much crude and claiming subsidies. So as the price of the cost of importing gas, petrol that we use in Nigeria goes up, government has to, fund it. And that alone, that issue alone, not fixing our refinery, spending our hard-earned foreign exchange in buying refined products that are supposed to be produced and refined here, that singular issue is a big chunk of why we have high inflation in Nigeria.
Honestly, I know we can go on and on, but on television we don't have all of the time. Let's wrap up with high operational cost and this issue of repatriating funds. We've seen what's happening to airlines talking about getting their funds, or they will stop en route of flying Nigeria. This means a lot. Do you see light at the end of the tunnel? But this actually obviously has to do with FX issues. How do you see us addressing this in the long, on the short, medium, and long term?
You see, you kept the most important issue for the last.
Of course, I had to take that. You got me there.
Yeah. I advise businesses. There is no businessman anywhere in the world who wants to invest somewhere and not be able to repatriate his profit. If we can fix these FX issues to allow free, relatively easy repatriation of your profits from legitimate businesses, more people are willing to come and invest in Nigeria because they recognize the opportunity. But we have a lot of companies, including many clients of ours, whose funds are trapped here in Naira. They've come here, brought in capital, gotten capital, certificate of capital importation as they call it, proof that they brought in foreign exchange, done business in Nigeria, but they are unable to access foreign exchange to take their profits out of Nigeria, even after paying all their taxes in Naira. That issue keeps foreign investors out of our economy. And the more we keep foreign investors out of our economy, the more we are going to struggle. We need to fix that so that we are able to hold ourselves out as allowing free trade within a free trade, free unrestricted repatriation of your profits from legitimate earnings. We need foreign investments in Nigeria, and if we don't fix that forex issues, then we're not going to have foreign investment the way we used to have it. And it's unconscionable for you to have a situation where the spread between the parallel market and the official market is more than 100% or closing on 100%.
It's sad, but we'll keep a tab on you, and we'll definitely invite you again to talk more around all of these issues. But this is what time can take today. I've been speaking to Mr. Eben Joels. He is the lead partner and head of technology and regulatory services at Stransact, I got that now, RSM International. Very interesting having you on the show, and it's your first time on the show. I appreciate you again.
Thank you.
All right, I hope to have you again. Coming up on the show,